Hello, welcome back to the Board Games 4K YouTube channel, and this is a channel where we give you reviews, playthroughs, unboxings, and we generally like to talk a lot of bollocks about tabletop gaming in general. And in this video, we're going to be talking about a game that was designed by Erik M. Lang in 2009. We're going to be talking about Chaos in the Alten Welt. Chaos in the Old World, and this is an area control game where you'll be placing your figures out on the board. You'll be using your Chaos cards to perform various crazy game-breaking abilities, and you'll be trying to get the most victory points that will allow you to win the game, funny old thing. And in this video, we're going to be giving you a very brief overview of the rules. We'll be telling you what we do like, what we don't like, and then we'll come back and we'll tell you whether or not Chaos in the Old World is still worth playing 10 years after it was first released in 2009. So remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment down below, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you after this. Board Games 4K. So, Chaos in the Old World. How do you play this game? So the first thing that you are going to do is you're going to take one of these player mats. You are going to take a bunch of miniatures. You're going to take some of these Chaos tokens, right? You're going to take a bunch of Chaos cards, and then you are going to take some upgrade cards. And you'll set, and each one of these factions represents a god that's sort of one of these gods. Each one of them has got a unique dial advancement condition that will be used to get your victory points during the game. So this game is divided into 6 phases, the first of which is the Old World phase, and that's quite simple. All you're going to do is you are going to draw the first card from the Old World deck, and then the player with the lowest threat level, which is displayed on these dials here, the player with the lowest threat level will enact this card and do what it says, and if there's any decisions to be made, then that player will take them. Right, so the next phase is the draw phase, and this will allow you to draw a certain number of Chaos cards that's displayed on your player sheet, and everybody gets to draw a different number of Chaos cards, and then you'll notice that you've got a certain number of power points, and each card has got a cost displayed on them, and then you'll have to adjust your power points accordingly. It's a bit like that sort of system that you find in games like Mexica or Kemet, that sort of thing. So the next phase of the game is what's called the summoning phase, and this will allow you to either muster troops. You'll be able to put these little miniatures on the board, or you'll be able to play one of these Chaos cards onto one of these spaces on the board. And every region has got 2 spaces, so once they're filled up, you can't take that action in the space that you want. And you'll notice on your player sheet that each unit has got a separate cost, and you'll have to pay that cost in player points. And the same applies to Chaos cards. So there's 3 different types of units. You've got the Cultist, which is represented by the same figure for all factions. You've got the Warriors, and you've got the Greater Demons, and each one of these has got a different cost. It's got a different attack value, which is used in combat, and it's got a different defense value, which is also used in combat. When you place these miniatures out on the board, you will have to place them in a space where you've either already got a unit or a space that is adjacent to a unit that is already on the board. Right. So the next phase of this game is the battle phase, and this is the meat and potatoes of Chaos in the Old World. So you look at the board and you'll see there's a system of arrows that tells you which location is activated first. So you'll go around all the locations, you'll look to see if there's any opposing units, whether it's peasants or other players in those regions, and if there is, then you will conduct a battle. And what you'll do, you'll add up all the attack values of all the units that are in that location, and then in strict player order, you will roll dice, and if you get a 4, 5 or 6, then you will score a hit, and then that player chooses to lay down miniatures, and they're essentially out of the game, but they still get to attack in a later round. And if you roll a 6, then it's considered a critical hit, and you will get to roll another die, and if you get another 6, you'll be able to roll another die. And this is the same sort of thing that we see in Arcadia Quest, when, you know, the same sort of thing. If you roll a critical hit, then you do have the opportunity to score multiple hits as well. So the next step in Chaos in the Old World is the corruption phase, and this consists of 2 phases. You've got the corruption step, and then you've got the domination step. You have to calculate your domination value, which is the amount of figures that's left in that region plus the sum of the cost of all the Chaos cards that you've placed in that region, right? So once you've calculated that, then you will match that with the region's conquest value, and if it's higher than the region's conquest value, then you'll get that many victory points, and you'll adjust the track accordingly. Right, nice and simple, yeah. So the next step is the corruption step, and what you'll have to do here is you will go round in strict location order, and then you'll see if there's a cultist in that region. If there is, you'll place a corruption token in that region, and if there's ever more than 12 corruption tokens in that region, then that region is considered ruined. You'll flip over the next ruination card, and then you'll score the number of victory points indicated on the top of the card, and then you'll have to wait until the end phase to score the other victory points that are on that card. And once a region is ruined, then it essentially becomes redundant for the rest of the game. There's still a few things you can do, still move into that region, all that sort of thing, but essentially it is a nuclear wasteland. So the next thing you'll do, you will enter the end phase, and this is where you'll be getting victory points and you'll be advancing your threat level if you've placed any corruption tokens on the threat dial. So the end phase takes place over 6 steps. The first step is you'll remove all of the chaos cards that are remaining on the board, you'll refresh all that stuff. You resolve any hero token, and this is bad news for the player with the most threat in that region, because they'll have to discard one of their figures in the region, right? Then you'll score all the ruined regions, and you'll look down the list of the ruination card that's in that region, and then the player with the most corruption tokens in said region will get the first amount of victory points, and then the player with the second most corruption tokens in that region will get the second most victory points. Right, nice and simple. So then what you'll do, you'll advance any threat dials. So if you've got any corruption tokens on those threat dials, which you'll place on there if you fulfill your dial advancement condition throughout the other steps of the game like we talked about earlier, then you'll advance your threat dial 1 space for every corruption token that's on the dial, right? And the threat dial gives you certain special abilities that will either give you victory points, it'll allow you to use one of these upgrade cards that will strengthen the defense and attack levels of your various units. It'll allow you to place warp stones out on the board, which essentially acts as corruption tokens. And if you ever advance your dial to the last space, then you will win the game. So the final step in the end game phase is that you will check to see if the game has actually ended, right? And this game can end in a number of ways. Like we said, you advance your threat dial to the last step, you'll win the game. If one or more players has scored 50 victory points, then the game will end. If 5 regions have been ruined, the game will end. And if the old world card, if there's normally 7 old world cards in play, if that deck is depleted, then yeah, you guessed it, the game will end. If there's ever a tie in the game ending, it's the player with the most threat that will win the game. And that's essentially how you play Chaos in the Old World, innit? So what do we like about Chaos in the Old World? So the first thing that we like about Chaos in the Old World is that these Chaos cards add a much needed take that element into the game. And if these weren't in there, the game would be very, very bland. It would just be placing miniatures out on the board and then having a few dice-ridden scraps, right? And all these Chaos cards are tailored to the asymmetrical abilities of each faction. Like for instance, Khorne has got more combat-oriented Chaos cards. You might have cards that stop you from placing corruption tokens in a region. You might have cards that let you conduct an additional battle in that region, in that phase, right? So these Chaos cards do add a nice sort of nasty element to an already sort of nasty game. So the next thing that we like about Chaos in the Old World is the theme of the game. It's one of the very first sort of Warhammer Euro game crossovers that we can think of. You know, before this we had a lot of the Warhammer games were either the sort of tabletop skirmish games or you had the role-playing sort of games. But this one sort of changed things up. They asked Eric M. Lang to design this game, and I think you read the designer notes and it's very clear that he was trying to sort of break new ground insofar as merging a Ameritrash theme with the Euro design of area control and card placement and all that sort of thing. So we really do like the fact that he's taken a risk in a sense, and it's sort of semi-paid off, but the mechanics and all that didn't really come together that well. So the merging of the two polar opposites laid the groundwork for other games like Blood Rage and Rising Sun and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we really do like, not so much the theme, but the way that Eric M. Lang tried to bring these two opposing forces together, you know what I mean? So what don't we like about Chaos in the Old World? So the first thing that we don't like about Chaos in the Old World is that it is insanely unbalanced. I mean, Khorne, right, he's got the, no doubt about it, got the advantage. And I know there's going to be some people out there that are saying, well, you know, you need to sort of play this multiple times to get the nuances of the factions into your head. But no. And Khorne will more often than not win this game. And I know people are going to be screaming at me going, well, it all depends on what strategy you're going to use. Everybody else needs to maybe gang up on Khorne and then sort of take him out. But why, if you're doing that, then you're not going to be able to fulfil your own objectives. And all Khorne needs to do is just beat people up. He needs to stomp around a map and just smack people around the face. And he gets corruption tokens on a threat wheel for doing that, and he gets victory points for doing that. So the game is wildly unbalanced. I don't care what anyone says. Every time we've played this, Khorne, more often than not, wins. It's the same sort of thing that we had with Cry Havoc, that frustratingly dense mechanic where the one faction is overpowered, and you're going to have to play it multiple times and hope that the human player has a bad game. The same applies to this one. It's frustratingly unbalanced, and that made us be really, really quite angry playing this game. So the next thing that we don't like about Chaos in the Old World is this board. Nothing really happens on it. It's a massive board, yeah. Most of it's taken up through these threat dials, which sort of don't really need to be here. The locations are just basically spaces for cards, and it's very, very difficult to see where the borders are. And when you're placing out so many tokens on this board and you've got 2 cards there, you can't really sort of tell whether or not certain tokens or certain miniatures are in a certain space. And tokens get moved. You think, well, it's on the border, which one was it in? It's really frustrating. The colour scheme is dire. It's actually really quite a nasty board to look at. It's meant to be on a stretched piece of skin, right? And it's just not very pleasant. It's very unclear. I don't know what they were thinking when they created this board, because it's a complete mess. So the next thing we don't like about Chaos in the Old World is this game drives me nuts with the adding up and all that sort of stuff. It drives me nuts. I'm not saying it's overly mathy, but it's frustratingly mathy, because you've got to add up the amount of figures you've got on the board. You've got to add that to the amount of corruption tokens and all that sort of thing. And I could never remember which was the domination phase or the corruption phase and what each meant, what each gave you. I couldn't remember whether or not it gave you victory points and how many victory points it gave you. I couldn't remember whether or not the domination phase or the corruption phase was where you're counting cultists and then you stick them on a board. It's a nightmare to remember. And I don't know, maybe I'm thick or something, but this game just drove me nuts. The rule book wasn't clear. I had to download a rule summary, which I'll do anyway, but even that was unclear. I was just constantly referring back to the rule book to try and clarify in my mind which phase did what and what it meant. And that really did bog the game down. It meant that you were constantly thinking, well, how do I get victory points? Which is I'm thinking now, I can't even remember now. And it was just a nightmare, It really is a mess. And it stinks of early attempts to, like we said in the previous point, an early attempt to merge 2 opposing genres. Eric Lang's gone for the Euro mechanisms, but he's tried to weld it to the chassis of the Ameritrash, and it doesn't really work that well. Okay, so the final thing that we don't like about Chaos in the Old World is the combat mechanism is sadly way out of date nowadays. I mean, it was probably quite good at the time, that you load the region with either Chaos cards or miniatures, and then you roll a few dice and then you win or lose based on that, yeah. And we're thankful for this, for introducing that sort of critical hit thing that you see in Arcadia Quest, because that was one of our favourite points about Arcadia Quest, yeah. Essentially, this game is way out of date. The combat mechanism is sort of unbalanced in favour of the more combat-oriented faction like Khorne, yeah. Each faction has a different attack level and a different defence level. It's very, very difficult to mitigate that threat from Khorne when combat is one of the main portions, the meat and potatoes of this game. So it's wildly unbalanced in terms of combat as well. So to summarise, is Chaos in the Old World still worth playing? Is it still worth shelling out 200 quid in 2019? And we're going to say no, it's not. It's an out-of-date area control game that is unbalanced and unpleasant to look at, right? We're thankful for this game for laying the foundations for other area control games. It's taken the bare bones of wonderful games like El Grande, tried to take that abstract Euro-ness from that sort of game and try and meld it into other sort of Euro games, like maybe like the area control sort of aspects, or the sort of Ameritrash aspects of maybe Twilight Imperium, that sort of stuff. I'm not saying it's a mishmash of Twilight Imperium, I'm just saying that it's tried to take that Ameritrash thing and meld it quite unsuccessfully to the Euro mechanism. But we are thankful for it. We without this, you wouldn't have games like Blood Rage or Rising Sun or Arcadia Quest for that matter. It's sadly out of print, so it's sort of relegated to this sort of status of an out-of-date relic. So I wouldn't recommend paying the amount of money that people are asking for this game. We've seen it on eBay for like nearly 200 quid. and it's definitely not worth it. We had it back in the day, we flogged it because we didn't like it, and we recently picked up a German version of this, and I painstakingly went through and found these paste ups on this Russian website, and I had to painfully go through and change to basically retranslate the game myself. But yeah, it's too expensive, it's out of print. We can't recommend this game as it stands today. We're thinking maybe 3 out of 5. Only buy this if A, you like Warhammer, and B, you're curious to see how these sort of miniature-laden Euro/Ameritrash area control games started, because this probably was, it laid new ground. But as a game today, it's wildly out of date. I wouldn't bother with it, and that is Chaos in the Altenwelt. So remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment in that section down below. If you made it this far, then give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.